and gentlemen, you're watching Startup Central right here on ET Now with me, Sumita Karir. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be getting you exclusive interviews from the world of technology, entrepreneurship, and the new economy. So let's first put the spotlight on Coursera. In fact, let's put the spotlight on EdTech because AI is rapidly changing how students learn, how teachers teach, and how skills are built for the future. From personalized learning to AI-powered courses, education is moving beyond the traditional classroom. But as AI reshapes the education landscape, what will that mean for students, educators, and of course, the future of learning, and for companies that are in the space of learning? So let's bring on board Mr. Greg Hart. He's the CEO of Coursera. Thank you very much, Mr. Hart, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on Startup Central on ET Now.
My pleasure.
Greg, it's been a while since we last interacted, and that was when you were at Davos. I think it was in 2023. AI was still taking some strides, but of course, it was not taking as much strides as it has. We'll come to that point in just a bit. But first, let me talk to you about the merger you've done with Udemy, followed by a deal with LearnVector. You've invested $100 million in the AI native learning company. What are your expectations from these deals, and what can they do for Coursera and the direction that the company wants to take now?
Well, the first chapter of Coursera's history was about bringing access to world-class education to anyone, anywhere. So a one-to-many model. The next chapter, which both Udemy and LearnVector are a part of, is about accelerating that and transforming it from one-to-many to one-to-one. And so with Udemy and the combination with Udemy, we have the ability to invest much more in a personalized and adaptive learning experience that delivers better outcomes for learners. The investment in LearnVector is an accelerant for that, and the hope that is it is a force multiplier for those efforts.
Right, Greg, but let me also ask you about AI. I was just speaking about AI. AI can now teach, it can explain, it can personalize learning. So how are companies like Coursera looking at retaining their key moats?
Well, AI is both a force that drives demand on Coursera. We see 5 enrollments every minute in AI content in India, and globally across Coursera and Udemy, we see 45 enrollments per minute. So it's an incredible driver of demand. It's also a tool to deliver a far more effective learning experience. And so we use AI on Coursera. Udemy also uses AI within their platform. One of the most powerful ways that we use it is Coursera's AI that sits alongside every course. In India, we see 98% satisfaction with that experience and positive outcomes for learners in India as we deploy that.
All right, Greg, but and you don't see then that companies like AI as competition to Coursera? What are the kind of pressures does the scaling up of AI and these companies really mean for companies that are in the space of EdTech and skilling space?
Well, I think one of the big differentiators that Coursera and Udemy have is the trusted content. So on the Coursera side, you have content from the best universities in the world and the biggest and best technology companies in the world. So Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Anthropic. And all of that is within a learning experience that is deeply grounded in delivering learners not just the ability to complete a course, but to demonstrate mastery of a skill that has value in the workforce. And that is very much what we're focused on and what the investment in LearnVector is really meant to accelerate.
Right, and we'll see, how those investments and those partnerships that you're currently striking are, of course, going to further your company and, of course, the kind of synergies that will come into effect. But Greg, enterprise is becoming a major growth engine, but companies are also at the moment under pressure to cut training budgets. So what are enterprise actually willing to pay today, and what are they no longer willing to pay for?
Well, I think enterprises are increasingly shifting from a focus on just a general learning benefit for employees to a much more targeted upskilling and reskilling learning program, because they recognize that to continue to grow as a company and to be competitive in whatever market they're in, they need their employees to have the skills to leverage AI in the workplace and to do that in whatever their specific role is. So I think we're seeing that transition happen. It's certainly the conversation that we are having with all of our enterprise partners. How can we help them deliver better outcomes by upskilling and reskilling their employees with AI tools to be more effective and more efficient?
Right. And, Greg, when you have these kind of conversations with enterprises, what is it that they're looking at, especially when it comes to partnering with companies like Coursera and the kind of outcomes that they're looking for their employees?
Well, I think they're looking at what is the most effective way for me to upskill and reskill my workforce. And so in the same vein that, you see companies investing in forward deployed engineers to benefit from third-party workforces that can help, bring a company forward, they also still have to upskill and reskill their existing workforce because they can't, just rely on outside engineering help in perpetuity. And so it's critical that their own employees make that transition as well. And so that's the conversation that we really have with all of our enterprise partners, delivering tailored programs that meet their needs function by function.
Okay, and this is only going to grow and perhaps change because, skills are going to change in the age of AI. And of course, that will perhaps lead to some kind of change in terms of the courses that Coursera offers. But Craig, employers say that they want skills, not just degrees. The question then is, can online credentials genuinely replace traditional university job credentials in the market?
Well, I think in India, you have a very unique challenge in that you don't have enough faculty to teach all of the student age population that you have. And you have a 30-to-1 student teacher ratio, which is much, much higher than OECD recommendations for the target optimal ratio of 15-to-1. Online learning can be an immense help. And that you see that reflected in the national education policy with 40% of credits, being eligible to be taken via online learning. Our goal is to make that online learning as effective as possible. And that is the reason that we're moving from one-to-many to one-to-one in a personalized, adaptive way. And I think AI now gives us the capability to do that. And that's exactly what the investment in LearnVector is meant to help foster.
Okay, and Greg, let's talk about India. This is your second largest market. How will the partnerships that you're striking globally, how are they getting localized here in the country?
Well, in a variety of different ways. So India is important for us as a market. It's also important for our employee base. So we have hundreds and hundreds of employees in India, both on the technical side and across our relationships with our university and industry and enterprise partners. One of the things that I'm most proud of that we do in India that I think is very relevant to this conversation, we have a team in India called the SOC, and they serve as a horizontal AI center of excellence. Any department in the company can submit an idea that they'd like help creating an agentic workflow for. The SOC does that in a handful of days, turns it back to that team and trains them on how not just to use it, but how to improve it. And so it really helps lift the entire company through the efforts of that team, which is based in India.
Okay, we do hope to see this become a global skills sort of center for companies like Coursera. But Craig, what is the Indian learner looking for today that is different from learners, let's say, for instance, in the United States or Europe?
Well, I think one thing that learners in India, increasingly because of immigration policies in certain countries like the US becoming more restrictive, looking for access to online learning from US institutions and degrees from US institutions. And so that's one of the things, obviously, that Coursera has long offered and is a real differentiator for us. I think the other thing that is clear in India and in all other countries is learning about AI. And so we now have thousands of courses on AI, and we see that reflected in the incredible demand for AI on the platform.
Okay, so Indians are choosing more courses that are related to AI. But Craig, what about pricing? The question of affordability becomes even more crucial and relevant now because AI models, and several of them are available for free, at least when we talk about the basic version. So how are you sort of addressing that challenge to ensure that more people come to your platform?
Well, in a conversation with a chatbot, you can, get high-level knowledge about something. Coursera and Udemy offered a much more structured approach to learning that we believe correlates to much better outcomes for learners by doing that. And we also ensure that we have academic integrity features so that people aren't taking shortcuts and not actually learning, getting surface consumption, but not actually being able to prove demonstration of a skill. And at the end of the day, we think what everybody around the world needs to have is the ability to continue to gain skills as technology changes what's required in the workforce. And we're very focused on solving that challenge. And we think we have a very differentiated solution to that versus just a conversation with an LLM.
Okay, and finally, Greg, for Coursera, India is already its second largest market with, and correct me if I'm wrong, 31 million learners. By when do you expect the India market to become your largest?
Well, actually, across Coursera and Udemy, we have 65 million across the two combined. If I were a betting man, I would say that India will probably pass the US, which is our largest market, if it continues at the rate of growth we're seeing in the next 3 or 4 years.
All right, so the next 3 or 4 years are going to be crucial, and that is something that we will be closely tracking. Greg, it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you and gain your insights into all that's happening in the space of EdTech and, of course, in the space of scaling and how that is getting challenged by AI. But definitely, you're betting big on the India market, so do hope to meet you here in India and interview you in person. India is, again, your second largest market, and you do hope this market to become your largest in the next few years. Thank you very much once again, Greg, for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to slip into a very short commercial break. In fact, after the break, we will be shifting our focus to OpenAI for Teens. Yes, OpenAI India has launched OpenAI for Teens. We ask on the show, is this an opportunity or a risk? In fact, discussing all of that and more will be Pragya Mishra. She's the head of strategy and global affairs at OpenAI India. That and much more is coming up right after this very short break. Do stay tuned.